Here's a take. Cartoon Network is in a league of its own. Yes, 1,000,010 memes about 90s nostalgia may lump it right in alongside Nickelodeon, the Disney Channel, and other networks predominantly catered to children, but to me, CN is its own animal. In its inception, it was indeed built with kids in mind, but over time its branding has clearly grown to represent a hub for animation, universally and limitlessly. Apart from one brief, disastrous era, it has set itself apart from its colleagues by committing basically entirely to animated programming. Even its separate blocks and spin-off networks like Adult Swim and Boomerang usually deal primarily in animation, though Adult Swim can at least say its live-action stuff is good.
It's free real estate.
But in turn, Cartoon Network has always been a hub for some of the most creative animation around, stuff that really shakes the game up. The Cartoon brand has yielded some of the most ubiquitous animated shows of its generation, shows whose IPs are still being kicked around, for better or for worse, to this day, because their popularity is just so reliable. But Cartoon Network's creative juice isn't just in its shows alone, and its methodology for promoting its brand has carved its own unique space in the hearts and minds of those who grew up with it. By this, I mean supplementary stuff to bolster the network. You'll often see people of my generation, usually kids of the late 90s and early aughts, rhapsodizing in nostalgia about the utter deluge of Flash games Cartoon Network put up on their sites. These were not just move this guy around to make him do stuff and make the number go up affairs, no. Though there were some greats to be found in that category. But no. Cartoon Network would regularly dole out long-winded games packed with pixel art and every cartoon character they could squeeze in. Games like their summer vacation multi-part adventure. Sure, it was all marketing, I see it for what it is now, but man, they had a lot put into them, and they were fun. I mean, it was trying to sell me something, yeah, I know, but it was fun.
Because it's so much fun, Chan! Get it!
It codified the Cartoon Network site in my head as a place for boredom busting on those handful of hours I got with the internet after school. Because as we all know, the internet is not a place to constantly hang out. Right, guys? Right? Right?
I'm just kidding. Could you imagine?
Something is being forgotten here, though. In the push to take advantage of the ever-growing internet to further Cartoon Network's presence and brand, there was another venture the company took that I've found to kind of get lost in the weeds. But it was a big part of my online hours as a kid, and it might have been a big part of yours too. So let's take a journey back into the early internet. This is the tale of the Web Premiere Toon. Now, let me preface this. Not much solid information is known about this little blip in Cartoon Network's history, so understand going in that what we're dealing with here is a patchwork of online sources of varying reputability and my own childhood memory. That is to say, we don't have a lot to work with. But I intend to pay homage to this glittering spot in my youth and maybe provide a space for other people to remember a little thing they might have memory hold. Web Premiere Toons were a special series rolled out by Cartoon Network at the very end of the 20th century, literally in 1999. It was around this time that Flash animation was really starting to take off, gaining a presence in both amateur and professional spaces. In investing in it at this point, however, Cartoon Network really had their finger on the pulse of the industry. Newgrounds, a major early incubator for Flash's possibilities, was more grassroots and had only been started about a few years prior. It also hadn't yet cultivated the Flash animation landscape it had come to be known for within a few years. Web Premiere Toons rolled out along the same time that professional animators were really starting to put Flash to use. Early in that same year, Showtime began airing the first televised Flash animated show, Whirl Girl, with the Flash animation only being adopted for it less than a year prior. Once the cat was out of the bag, the novelty of the technology, coupled with the dot-com boom, led to an explosion of Flash animation all across the internet. So it shouldn't be too surprising that the home of animated programming on network television was jumping on board. And so came Web Premiere Toons. The title was pulled from World Premiere Toons, the original name for Cartoon Network's 1995 anthology series, What a Cartoon. The particulars are where things get blurry, though. The first Web Premiere Toons premiered around 1999. They had lower frame rates and crunchy audio, which may seem primitive to us now, but this was almost entirely untread ground at the time. This was what a high-level Flash animation production looked like in the late 90s. And honestly, even by those standards, I think it looks pretty great. Color theory, character design, technique, it's all there. The animators clearly knew how to use the limitations to their benefit, pushing stylization and even throwing in interactive elements that elevated the works even further. So that's the origin story. Let's get to the patchiest source of information. My memory.
I was there, Gandalf.
The first Web Premiere Toon I remember noticing was a mini-series that the network was promoting about the banana splits. Ironically, one of the few Hanna-Barbera properties that was originally live action. Every update day, a new episode would drop about an adventure focusing on a different member of the group. While this is when I first began noticing the web series, the thing that really caught my eye wasn't the IP stuff, but the music videos. A while after launch, Web Premiere Toons had come to be made up of several different categories. These typically fell into one of three: toons based on existing Hanna-Barbera or cartoon properties, cartoons that were wholly original, and music videos. Some of the first videos I remember seeing helped shape the timeline a little. One I also remember being advertised on television was a video for the Sugar Ray song, When It's Over. This would almost certainly be in either spring or summer of 2001, as the single came out in May, and the album it belonged to came out in June. The video is definitely eye-catching and charming, though it's very obviously a product of early Flash just by looking at its style. It uses a lot of the same animation loops over and over again to fill space and time, but it's still clear that the team behind it put a lot of skill into it. And this was definitely top quality given the constraints they were working with. For all the limitations, it's still really visually and conceptually interesting, and it definitely caught my attention as a kid. So much so that I watched it over and over and over again, and then it had me scouring all the cartoons that had come in the last 2 years. And even though this video had already blown my tiny little mind, the music video that was done for Eden's Crush would only exacerbate my fascination. Made to promote their song Love This Way, this video was a visually rich science fiction story of girl group Eden's Crush as a band of anime-inspired heroines who rescue a desolate planet from hatred and, I don't know, rocks.
You know your damn role, and shut your...
This video also dropped around spring 2001 to promote the group's only album, but it is, in my opinion, even better than When It's Over. The animation has an incredible level of polish, from its clean lines to its cohesive but enticing color palettes. The characters and objects move with a ton of fluidity, weight, and depth, with traditional animation principles like squash and stretch being applied. The shots are ambitious and had to have been time and labor intensive. Just look at this ground up shot of Nicole Scherzinger waving flowers around and pivoting from side to side. The artists who worked on this were clearly firing on all cylinders. The line weight, shot composition, silhouettes, and just about every detail is fine-tuned. Which is kind of why it bums me out to say I'm pretty sure not many other people knew this even existed. Even at the time, I remember it being kind of buried in the site, something I had to hunt down out of boredom. But oh man, I must have watched it like a zillion times once I did find it. It was just so cool. Look at it!
Talented, brilliant, incredible.
This rapid, consistent uptick in quality spoke to the strong creative energy that always seemed to be in full swing on the Web Premiere Toons section of the site. It was at this point that I was fully plugged in. I remember scouring what cartoons were there, and then checking back every week to make sure I didn't miss the newest one. These were usually deeply cartoony concepts, about 3 minutes long. A Meal of Two Cities was a musical mini-opera about a girl made of meat who falls for a vegetable man, headed by director Dennis Morella. Mr. Rhombus was a dry, geometric city fable directed by Nick Hewitt. Herman and Vermin was kinda gross to me. But it was memorable and unapologetically creative. These cartoons were strange and all over the place, which meant they slotted in perfectly with Cartoon Network's mission to unleash weird, interesting animation onto the world, in whatever form it could possibly take. And boy, it didn't slow down for a second. You could actively see the quality of these animations getting better and bolder with each new work. Within just 2 years, the Web Premiere Toons exclusive series Wendell and Wuggums went from this to this. I was genuinely shocked by just how great this cartoon looked. The last Wendell and Wuggums cartoon, Game Over, is a masterclass to me. The striking shapes, the rich color palettes and polished shading, the dramatic perspective and shot choices, the fluidity of the character animation, the use of lighting, With Flash still only a few years old, these artists were creating television quality work that used every tool in their skill set to a fine point. From the get-go, their work was top-notch in a pretty new medium, but still they elevated more and more. This wasn't factory-farmed, hastily churned-out product to make a quick buck on the .com bubble. This was art, baby! Weird, colorful art made by hardworking craftspeople who wanted to make great stuff. Game Over was stunning. It was also, in my memory, one of the last videos they ever uploaded. I'd find myself coming back to the Web Premiere Toons site week after week, looking for the usual updates that never appeared. I'd rewatch my favorites, waiting for the mythical day when they'd remember they were supposed to be posting them again, and that day never came. Eventually I gave up. I moved on to new fixations. And before long, Cartoon Network would bulldoze the section of the site out of existence. A lot of the site's Y2K era novelties, like the games, would stick around for a while after, but Web Premiere Toons was wiped pretty fast, leaving almost nothing behind. At this point in my nostalgia, I started to hit a wall. Very little is out there compared to other Cartoon Network throwbacks, and my memory from the age of 7 isn't exactly a top-notch source, so I had to get creative. Thanks to the truly kind souls who preserved these flashes and uploaded them, I was able to attach names to these brilliant little cartoons and reach out to a bunch of the creatives who worked on them. And much to my immense gratitude, a few of them found the time to offer me some insight. The information I'm presenting here wouldn't be possible without them giving me the time of day, so I can't thank them enough and will of course be providing some info on these artists towards the end of the video. But for now, let's get into what they told me. Talks about the Web Premiere Toons project began around 1998. About a year before they started going up. The earliest entries were Pink Donkey and Fly and Be Happy, which were spearheaded by artists like Mark Newgarden at a studio called Funny Garbage, based out of New York City. This is a little unusual nowadays as the bulk of the animation industry in America is localized in Los Angeles. As per the credits of several of these animations, many of the toons weren't one-man shows like we might expect on places like YouTube and Newgrounds, but often done by small teams at different studios. Besides Funny Garbage, toons were also crafted by groups like Wildbrain and Curious Pictures, among others. Cartoon Network seemingly approached this project with the intent to take it far, building on the new prospect of flash animation. The medium was indeed novel territory at the time, and Dave Reddell described the atmosphere as being like a gold rush. As a leader in animation, CN wanted to get a hold on the new movement quickly and cash in with quality material. So they acted as a client, enlisting studios and utilizing both existing IPs and approaching pitches from within the studios themselves. Mark Newgarden mentioned that he was told the Be Happy series would quote-unquote run forever, according to Cartoon Network. Funny Garbage specifically pitched Be Happy along with the Pink Donkey series already in works at their studio. Hanna-Barbera properties were considered reliable idea banks for other animations. While these animations were studio works, the teams themselves were usually very small, with sometimes just one main creator behind them. Mark Newgarden said that he did the majority of the work for the Be Happy series. Boarding, directing, writing, designing, and roughing it. He even casted the performers. On typical animated programming, these sorts of jobs are relegated across a broader studio. Having one artist handle that big of a spectrum of jobs coupled with the novelty of Flash was a big ask. The program, while now ubiquitous in the industry, both on small and large productions, was as buggy as one might expect on a brand new, rarely used platform. And these artists were charged with making work that suited the established Cartoon Network brand on projects that would be visible to millions. It was a tall order, to say the least. While Web Premiere Toons is hard to truly dig up now, its initial impact was strong. Newgarden said that the Cartoon Network site even crashed from the amount of traffic it was getting, back in the day when the internet was newer, smaller, and slower. In its debut, the Web Premiere Toons project was considered a big success by Cartoon Network, which definitely tracks with my experience. The whole reason I knew it existed was because they were plugging it on television. Cartoon Network was also seemingly not super involved in the production, which meant a lot of these animations were being handled by small teams at small studios. For how simple it may seem to us now, the project seems to have been a big undertaking with a lot of creative energy poured into it. It might be easy to look back at these cartoons and say they look clunky or dated, especially when we've grown accustomed to super polished DIY Flash animation by indie creators on Newgrounds and YouTube. But the work behind them was a big undertaking that was pretty atypical of animation practices at the time. The fact of the matter is, these artists grappled with a new, challenging program that required them to be flexible and adapt to new methods of working in their medium. And just by looking at the progression in quality over the few years that the project ran, it's easy to see how hard they worked and how quickly they did that adapting. The other thing that became quickly apparent as I went through the backlog of these cartoons is that the creative energy is off the charts. Around the same time as Web Premiere Toons, Cartoon Network had been expanding on its IPs, with a number of those secondary ventures that didn't really do much besides have a little fun with animation as a medium. A notable example would be the Groovy series of interstitial animations, where classic Hanna-Barbera and cartoon characters alike were put into more eccentric situations, usually set to music. This included a ska version of the Jabberjaw Band in a Pain music video, a Devo tribute to Mojo Jojo, and a soul coughing video poking fun at Hanna-Barbera's cost-cutting animation techniques. Clearly, Cartoon Network was eager to play with its toys, and the Web Premiere Toons did the exact same thing. Many of the shorts were reimaginings of Hanna-Barbera characters that reflected the times, such as a send-up of the Chopper Bunch where they'd turned into anime characters. Side note, this scared the piss out of me as a kid. I'm not even sure why. It terrified me. I think I only watched it once. And anime is all over these. Artists and animators obviously already knew about this stuff, but it was still coming into the broader culture in the West at the time, so untread ground. There seemed to be little rhyme or reason to what got greenlit besides one key thing. It had to be fun. Web Premiere Toons stopped updating around 2002, when I waited and waited for their return before chasing Neopets and Toontown Online instead. And within a few years, the series that was supposed to air forever was removed from the site. And then after that, the Flash games were gone too. The era of the cartoon came to an end. It was time for new voices, new visions. Within a few years, Cartoon Network's pantheon would change completely, occupied by characters who'd become just as recognizable and legendary. And I can't say there's anything wrong with that. Like most websites these days, the Cartoon Network site has become sparse, a sort of skeleton crew of content. It's mostly just a handful of games and videos. It seems kids don't spend much time on dedicated brand sites these days. I'm far from the first zillennial, I think that's what I am, in the proverbial internet retirement home huffing about how kids are on the TikTok instead of Barbie.com and Mama Media. Why aren't you being marketed to the way I did it? I mean, it makes me feel like a spiteful old man to say that things were just better when I was a kid, and I'd probably be way off base. I'd say Cartoon Network's programming is as excellent and creative as it's ever been. I can complain about the youths all I want, but I can admit there's no shame in growing up on Adventure Time. But I can only imagine the kind of work that would come out of applying that Y2K era ethos to their current lineup. I'm thinking Adventure Time music videos set to indie rock music, Flash artists commissioned to reimagine the now nostalgic cartoon characters, the kind of stuff we kind of already see coming out of Adult Swim. Envisioning a new multimedia empire devoted to being ridiculous and fun, housed on a busy website made with kids in mind. But it seems that pop culture pinpoint is firmly in the past. For better or for worse. The Web Premiere Toons era is a little hard to dig up. While a lot of animations have thankfully been saved and preserved and even uploaded to video sites like YouTube, just as many, if not more, are seemingly gone. The project could have just as easily become lost media beyond the files of their animators, if not for the careful saving of some fans. If only someone had made a video about this, wow! Anyway. There are small corners of the internet where people have worked hard to keep track of what's been found, what's gone, and what's still being looked for. With Flash no longer being supported online, a lot of the links that are around have become useless, making the journey even harder. Right now, a lot of these cherished childhood memories are far away, probably stuck on hard drives of the depths of portfolios of animators who are still hard at work, making new exciting projects. But hey, it's the internet, it gotta be out there somewhere. A lot of nostalgia paints modern times as lesser, like a loss of some great tradition. It's not a coincidence that it gets milked for reboots, farmed for engagement, and even weaponized for politics so often. The things that are unfamiliar to us can be threatening, especially when they reflect that time is passing. Most people don't like to feel that their youth is slipping out of their hands. When I watch these cartoons, it's easy to feel like I've lost something special that's never coming back. It's especially tempting when you consider that so much of the project is still up in the air, with dedicated toon nerds still chasing down bits and pieces of what wasn't saved. But it's like I said from the jump, Cartoon Network is so special. Even now, with people like David Zaslav threatening its output, the artists who work creating new ideas and projects for the brand continue to push the envelope in pure passion for animation as a medium. So why mourn what's in the past because it's allegedly gone? A lot of the cartoons I loved are still here. I can still watch them. A lot of their creators are still working, making fresh concepts that are just as fun and exciting and helping to bring life to all new works. The animators I spoke to are still working. They're still making amazing stuff. This particular project is far in the past and its time has come and gone. And that also means the time we spent with them has already happened. The joys of the past can't be returned to, but that also means they can't be undone.
Yahoo kaboom! Wasn't that a big cartoon? Now let's sneak into Mom and Daddy's. Whoops! Oh no! We're out of time today. You know that means...
We got something sad to say. Yes, a little quick goodbye. There's tears in our great big cartoony eyes. A little quick goodbye to Miss Piggy here, and just a couple others, you may have no fear.
The character that I had drawn, I had done a bunch of character designs. I think it was for Microsoft actually, way back, and there was this one pissed off little bird who was yellow at that point, and I remember showing them to a friend, and she said, "That's you."
And you, and you, and you, and you, and you, and you.
I'm Mark Merrick, the animator of Henry and June for the show Kablam.
Hi, I'm Henry.
And I'm June.
Henry and June are the host characters for Kablam, and that means that they open the show and they tell you what is coming up during the course of the show. Henry just rolled out of bed. He's always got this hair that's sort of all over the place. That's how he started, was really with his hair, and then I worked my way down. We could talk about how Henry was patterned after ending, but I don't think that was...
Quick goodbye to these guys here. Jingle and a magic bird. Shake and skink and bloom and doobie. Quick and pluck and zippity zoomy. Goodbye to boomerang dang. So long to lickety spittle. Farewell to bunny clang clang. Adieu to the littlest little. That wraps up big cartoony Joe. But little Mr. Biggie just wants you to know.
I never had such good goodbyes before. Maybe, if you please, just a little more.
Goodbye to Mum.
Coming from, Sony PlayStation and all the little handheld games that you have now, kids really want games. They want to interact with the cartoons. They don't want it to just be something they sit there and watch anymore. I think they want to be involved. So, yeah, I think the potential for that is huge.
Got at least a minute more, so come out through the door. Say quick hello to Wumpy. Say hi to Belly Bumpy. They're waiting in the...
I relied on the animators a lot more because it was set up in the style of cutout animation where all the pieces are built separately, so all the characters are split up into their main body parts, and then it's the animator's responsibility to sort of put them together and decide how they're going to move and act in what manners they're saying.